Hi, everybody. So today what we're going to be reviewing is chapters 1 and 2. So expectations for this review. We learned a lot of rules in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. So what I would like you to do is in your notes, I would like you to be writing down the rules in your notebook, okay? So everything that I'm writing and that's on my screen, please write down. If there's something that you're like, I know exactly how to do this, then you don't have to write it down if you already have it in your notes. But I really would like you writing down anything that you aren't as confident about still, because you're going to be able to use these on the test, which will be helpful. Okay, so let's just go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to review is 1.1. And if you remember back to 1.1, we talked about integers. And just to remind you, integers can be negative numbers or positive numbers. They go from negative infinity to positive infinity. Okay, so just like that, they can be negative numbers, they can be positive numbers. All right, moving on to absolute value. So here you see the absolute value of an integer is, and I'm going to highlight this, oopsies, is the distance between the number and 0 on a number line. So reminder, absolute value is always going to be positive. So the absolute value of a positive 4 is just going to be positive 4 because the distance between 4 and 0 is 4 units. And the absolute value of negative 4 is also going to be positive 4. So absolute value is always going to be positive because it's the distance. All right, moving on to 1.2, adding integers with the same sign. This is a very important rule to write down. Everybody needs to be writing down this rule, please. So if you're adding integers with the same sign, what that means is that both numbers are either positive or both numbers are negative. Okay, so same signs. And the rule is add the absolute values of the integers, then use the common sign. Okay? All right. So let's think about negative 2 plus negative 4. Okay? That's going to equal, well, we take the absolute values of both. That's going to give me a positive 2. The absolute value of negative 4 is going to give me a positive 4. Add those two together. That gives me 6. And then the common sign is negative signs. So it's going to be negative 6. If you want to think about it contextually, think about being in debt and borrowing money. You could also think about a number line, okay? Draw out a number line. When you draw out a number line, if this is 0 over here, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, okay? If you start at negative 2, so you go to negative 2, and then you subtract 4 more, you have to go over 1, 2, 3, 4. It takes you to negative 6. So use your number lines, think about it in terms of debt, but most importantly, use this rule, okay? All right, now let's talk about adding integers with different signs. So if they have different signs, that means one integer is positive, one integer is negative. So that rule is you're going to subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. Then use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. Okay? So that's the rule. Get that written down. So let's practice with an example. So if you have 5 plus negative 10, okay? one's positive, one's negative. So you take the absolute values of both. That gives me 5. Absolute value of negative 10 is 10. You decide which one's greater. Well, I know 10's greater. This 5 is lesser. You subtract the lesser one from the greater one. So 10 minus 5, I know that's just going to give me 5. Then the last and most important step, you have to take the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. So you want to go to the greater one, which is this one, and you want to look back at what that integer was and what the sign was. I see it was negative. So therefore, I know it's going to be negative 5. All right. So follow that rule to a T as well. That's what's going to help you. Okie doke. Let's go down to 1.3, subtracting integers. The nice thing about subtracting integers is as long as you understand 1.2 adding integers, 1.3 subtracting integers is pretty much nothing new. So to subtract integers, all you got to do is add its opposite. Okay? And what that means, so if we have negative 3, oopsies, let's do this in blue. So if we have negative 3 minus 4, okay? You are going to set it up. You're going to keep the first number the same, so negative 3. You're going to change the subtraction sign to an addition sign. And then the opposite of a positive 4 is a negative 4. Okay, so essentially what this turns into is negative 3 plus negative 4, which that is just a 1.2 problem, okay? That's just a 1.2 problem. Then you have the same signs, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to follow the rule that we just did above of adding integers with the same signs. And what that rule is take the absolute values of both, add them together, and then take the common sign, okay? And the common sign is negative. So that's going to be negative 7, and that's your answer. So that's pretty much all there is to subtracting integers. Multiplying integers with the same sign. So for multiplying integers with the same sign, if they have the same sign, the product, which is an answer of the multiplication problem, is always positive. What that means, if you multiply a positive number by a positive number, you're going to get a positive number. If you multiply a negative number by a negative number, you're going to get a positive number, okay? So if you're multiplying integers with the same sign, your product's always going to be positive. All right, multiplying integers with different signs, product is always going to be negative. Okay, always negative. So negative 4 times 3, 1 positive, 1 negative, that's going to be a negative 12. 4 times negative 2, 1 positive, 1 negative, that's going to be negative 8. Okay, so if you have different signs in those integers, it's always going to be negative. All right. Okay, so dividing, pretty straightforward. I'm not even going to really write too much for this. I'm just going to write same as multiplication. Okay. So what that means is if you're dividing integers with the same sign, it's always going to be positive. Okay. And if you're dividing integers with different signs, it's always going to be negative. So just like multiplication. So you can see here, if you had negative 8 divided by negative 2, your answer is going to be a positive 4. Okay. If you have negative 6 divided by 3, your answer is going to be negative 2. It's going to be negative. All right. So same rules as multiplication, pretty straightforward. All right. So that's chapter 1. Make sure you have that down. Once you have that down, then we're going to get started on to chapter 2.